see you guys in the dark.
I believe I was about 16 when this took place and was in sixth form college here in the UK, so I'm guessing it was in the spring/summer of 2001. It was either a Friday or Saturday night when I got a text asking what I was up to that and if I wanted to go out. I had no idea who the text was from as the number wasn't saved in my phone and didn't have a name at the end of the text. I text back and got a call. Picking it up, I hear my friend Ong's voice. I was happy to hear from her as we went to secondary school together. I went on to college and she decided to do other things, so we didn't see each other regularly anymore. She didn't have social media and refused to have a mobile phone. I praised her for finally getting with it and getting a phone. She burst my bubble when she said it was a friend's. We had a quick chat. It was probably about 10 p.m. and ICBA to get ready, so I declined and said another time. Around 12 a.m., I got a text. I thought she was contacting me again. The text read something along the lines of, "Hey, this is Daniel, Ong's friend. I'm bored and stuck here till Ong wants to leave. Hope you don't mind me texting you." I didn't. At this age, I used to be up till stupid o'clock on the internet, and as he was a friend of my friend, I didn't see a problem. So he texted me for a bit. It was a kind of nothingness conversation. Around 2 a.m. or so, I get a call. It's him. He said I sounded nice and that he wanted to have a chat. Okay, cool. I'm still wide awake, so we had a chat. It was all right. We had a laugh. Talked about nothing much for a while, then said goodbye. Next morning, I get a text from him. I reply. He texts me all day and rings me again later. I find out more about him, that he works in the local shopping center in a certain store I went to all the time. The kind of stuff he likes, which is nothing like me, but whatever. We talk about where we live as we live in different towns about 20 minutes apart by bus. At this point, he knows what I look like as Ong has shown him photos of us she had, but he has also seen my Friendster page, which had current pics of me. He, like Ong, didn't have social media back then, so I didn't know what he looked like, but he described himself. Could have been literally any boy in SE London at that time. I didn't really care what he looked like as I wasn't interested like that, but I had no problem chatting. So this carries on for a week or two. Him texting me, calling me, find out about me, asking loads of questions, which at the time seemed harmless. Around this time, I had time off college for Easter holidays, and he starts saying we should meet up as we both free. I tell him I can't as I have to do some coursework. This was only half true. I did have CW, but I always leave it till the last minute, so was literally just being lazy and sitting about the house. He clearly didn't get the message as he started to text me constantly. If I didn't reply fast enough for him, he sent more texts and would call. I was like, dude, I am so busy trying to do this. When I have time, I will text you. After a few days of that, I got a text saying, I've had to go do XYZ. I am in your area. Let's meet. I told him I was busy and couldn't. He said that was okay, but then kept bombarding me with texts urging me to meet him. No. 2 days later, I get a text saying he is in my area again. We have to meet. No. The end of that week, he is there again and again. No. The start of the next week, he starts again about being in my area. I ignore the text this time. Later on that day, I get a call from a local area number. I pick up and it's him. He says he is here and wants to hang out and that I didn't reply to his text. I tell him I'm not at home and I've been flat out and that I will text him when I'm free. I found out the number he called from was a public telephone box on the main road that connects to the road I live on. The constant texts were annoying, but I let them slide as I had no intention on meeting him, and it was only a text, but to find out that he actually was literally in my area and knew roundabout where I lived, all the questions he was asking before that seemed harmless made sense now. He was narrowing down where I lived to the street. As I have a college at the bottom of my road and a park at the top, he knew this. He knew what bus I got from college and the stop I got off at, which further narrows down the part of the street I lived on. He used to ask things about the clothes I wore and accessories I had, what patches, etc. were on my backpack, so he would definitely know it was me if he saw me. Now, this was not cool at all. I told him that I am not meeting him anytime soon, that I am busy, and that he needs to chill the hell out, as I don't need the hassle. This really put me off wanting to speak to him, as it was fucking weird, and I really should have told him to fuck off at this point. But when you don't really care about the person other than to have a chat with, I just thought if I lessen the contact, he will get bored and piss off of his own accord. School started again, and I felt safer knowing that he couldn't just be in my area when he had college quite far from me, so I wouldn't run into him. But the shop I usually went to, which was near my college, I avoided as there was nothing in there I couldn't get elsewhere, and didn't really go into the shopping center unless I had to, and that would be during school lunchtime, so he wouldn't be there. This wasn't because I was scared. I just didn't ever want to meet him, and I was starting to get pissed the more I thought about it and didn't want to be nasty to him. So the text continued. over the next few weeks, I wouldn't reply to the majority of them. And when I did, they were polite and stated that as I had exams soon, I didn't want the distraction. I then started to ignore his messages. They didn't stop. Another phone number I didn't know texted me. I was like, who is this? And of course, it was him from his mom's phone, and he was pissed off. I'd replied to that text and not his. Now, this was becoming a fucking joke. During this time, one Saturday night, my mom rang me as I was coming home from a gig. She told me a boy I went to primary school called Morley rang to speak to me today and asked if he could call again. And before the call ended, asked if I had a boyfriend. I was like, what? Morley used to like me back in primary, but we hadn't spoken since we left school at like 11. But our moms still chatted occasionally, so I had no clue what the hell that was all about. I get a call from Morley the next day. He tells me he's sorry for ringing me, but he really needs to ask me a question. So he asked me if I had a boyfriend. I said I didn't. He then asked me if I knew someone called Daniel. I said yes, that I had been speaking to someone called Daniel, but what started out as a pleasant chat and some texts had turned into way too much. He then went on to tell me that Daniel goes to his sixth form and is loosely associated with his friend group, as no one really likes him. Boys being boys, they were talking about girls, and Daniel went on to talk about his girlfriend. They asked questions about her, and he told them who she was, what she looked like, what she was into, where she lived, etc., etc. He didn't think much of it. When he came back to school after the holidays, he had a bunch of clothes in his bag. They asked him where he was going, as they wear uniform, and he was bragging about how he had come straight from hers, as he stayed round her house lots during the holiday and told them in detail how he fucked her and got up to all sorts. He used to entertain them with stories all about her, and after a while finally showed them her picture, my picture. Morley was livid on the phone. He said the stuff Daniel was saying that we had done was just plain nasty, and the stuff he was saying about me he didn't think was true and wanted to confirm. He told me he would ring me back in a few days. Daniel was still trying to speak to me after hearing from Morley what he had been up to. I'm not going to answer clearly. I set the number to divert. I don't know if you could block numbers on my phone back then. If it could, I didn't know how. I ignored the texts he sent me. I didn't even open them. I got home from school Monday afternoon, and about 6 o'clock, I get a call from Morley, who again was pissed off but was delighted. He told me he just got home, and that Daniel had come into school with clothes in his bag again that morning and said how he has been staying at mine and that we fucked, etc. At that point, Morley, in front of everyone, was like, you have never been to her house. He was like, of course I have. And Morley was like, it must have been a fucking Wendy house, as he knows for certain that he has never been to my house, as he knows me and had spoken to me yesterday, and that I am not his girlfriend. In fact, he has never met me, only spoken to me, and how I refused to meet him and have been pretty much ignoring him as he kept turning up where I live to try and spot me. This didn't go down well, obviously, as he had been made to look like a complete fucking twat. That night, my phone wouldn't stop with texts and calls from his mom's number. He wouldn't stop calling. I told my mom everything after Morley called, as she wanted to know what it was about. I gave the phone to my mom at like 11 p.m. and she picked up, and he was sounding all in a panic, saying he needed to talk to me. She said no, I was bed, how inappropriate it was to call at this time, and not only that, but don't call me again. Number put on divert, and I was still getting voicemails. I texted him and told him to leave me alone, that it really is enough now. I know what he did and that I don't want to know him. He went quiet till around 2 a.m. when he started calling again from a third number. I was asleep and my mom was awake. The call woke me up, so I called her in, and she picked up the phone and went fucking mental at him. She said she knows all about it and to leave me alone or there will be trouble. He still texted after that. My mom was beyond livid. And at 6 a.m., she rang his mom's mobile, woke her up, told her all about what her son was up to. She was initially pissed off to be woken so early, but when my mom laid it out, she just went quiet and was like, I am sorry, I will deal with it. I didn't hear from him again after that. Ong called me. I hadn't spoken to her since that first night, about probably just over a month and a bit before, and said she found out what had happened, I think from his mom, as she wanted to know the validity of the call she received and was so incredibly sorry that he wasn't even really her friend. They knew each other from primary school and he lived closed, and that he just turned up at her house and imposed himself on her, and her mom would always let him in despite her warning her not to, as she liked him, so she just put up with him. She did say that in the past, when he was in secondary school, he became obsessed with a girl in their area and used to effectively stalk her, and that her mom complained to his, but that he was young then and didn't think he did stuff like that anymore. Clearly, he was. I met Austin in the fall of 2024 via a message he had sent me over Facebook. I was lonely, really lonely. I had just moved to a new city with very few friends because I transferred from community college to university, so I gave him a chance. I messaged him back and we began chatting. We had a mutual friend, so I thought nothing of it. Maybe she told him about me. Maybe he had seen me in passing. Time began to pass, and we got much closer. Soon I met him in person for a date. After this date, things began to move very fast. We hung out all of the time and stayed at each other's places almost constantly. He was so sweet at first, and I was so excited to be around someone I believed was so genuinely kind. Fast forward a couple of months, and I move into his apartment. It was a bad idea, I know, but my current living situation was growing increasingly more toxic as I was living with 6 other girls. This was when things began to go downhill. He introduced me to his daughter, Lily. She was so sweet, and I adored her. He didn't get to see her much as he would tell me his baby mama was insane and keeping her away from him to control him. As I got to know him more, he began to grow more violent towards me. It started with small things like yelling at me over misplacing a phone charger or not putting something where he thought it belonged. As time began to pass, the instances of his anger increased and became more dramatic. He would scream at me almost every single day. It was always my fault if he lost his keys, if I was home from work later than expected because he needed childcare, if I went to visit family or friends. It didn't matter what the situation was, everything was my fault. In addition to this, he was serially cheating on me, as I would find out later. He would be texting a multitude of girls from the ages of 15 to 22. He was a 25-year F man. Some more time passed, and we moved to a much larger apartment in a different suburb of our city. Things were well for a while, and I still remained oblivious to his horrible internet activity. After a very late night at work, he wakes me up and shows me a little tiny kitten. "I found her at work and brought her home for you," he whispered to me. I named her Stripe, and she was my soul cat. Me and this little kitten did absolutely everything together. Years ago, around 2016 or earlier, I had gotten into a relationship with a guy that I met through an online app. We had been LDR for quite some time, and although we did meet up in our 1.5 year relationship, it was rare and with friends or family accommodating us. Since we weren't able to celebrate our 1 year anniversary, we decided to postpone it and ended up meeting a couple of months after it had passed. My boyfriend had invited me to go on a road trip with him, as he wanted us to spend time together with just the both of us there. My boyfriend had been incredibly kind and love bombing me for the past year, and I hadn't seen any red flags yet for me to question his request. He even went so far as to personally ask permission from my parents and providing them with the complete details of the trip and offering that his cousins would travel with us if they were not comfortable with the idea of just the two us traveling together. Needless to say, he was able to receive my parents' consent. On the day of our trip, he picked me up at home, and all was well for the early portions of our trip until we had stopped at a gas station. I thought he had just needed gas, but instead of heading towards the fuel machines, he parked on the far end of the gas station and asked me to turn off my phone and that he would be turning off his. I was puzzled because he knew how important it was for me to keep in contact with my parents, as they had specifically asked me to update them. I gently declined his request, but I could see that he wouldn't take no for an answer. He was trying to convince me through affection at first to comply with his request, and when it didn't work, he started becoming aggressive. He grabbed my phone from my hand, turned it off, and put it in his pocket along with his cell phone. I began to feel a surge of panic, but didn't want to alert him, so I asked if I could quickly use the restroom. Before I could open the door, I heard the locks click. I joked with him to open the door and told him that I really needed to use the restroom instead. He gave me the cold shoulder and restarted the engine. As we drove, I could feel the surge of anxiety in me. He had never behaved this way throughout the duration of our relationship. As we approached a stoplight, he grabbed something from the back of my seat, and although I couldn't clearly see what he was holding, I was afraid it was a weapon. He then asked me if I loved him, and if I did, why was I constantly cheating on him? Confused, I asked him how I had been cheating and who with. To my surprise, he brought up the names of my close guy's friends that he had been hanging out with in the past year that we were together. He further questioned me about my night out with my friends, stating that I was probably sleeping around or getting drunk and lying to him about my whereabouts. I didn't know what to say and was lost for words due to the shock of what I was hearing and his behavior that had never shown itself until now. It made me question our entire relationship and if I actually knew who my boyfriend really was. It scared me how manipulative and convincing he was, not only to me, but to my friends and family. It was getting dark by the time we arrived at what looked like a cheap Airbnb. As we got out of the car and walked to the lobby, he didn't say a word. He stated his name and room number that he had reserved for us, and the receptionist smiled and greeted me as I locked eyes with her. Hoping to alert her, I stared intently at her and tried to mouth out that I needed help, but she didn't seem to understand what I was saying and made the painful mistake of asking my boyfriend, who hurriedly walked us out of the lobby and into our room. That night was the most horrific night of my life, which left me traumatized and angry. He had stripped me down to my underwear. He reiterated the same questions he asked in the car, on the trip here, and every time he felt I gave the wrong answer, I was flogged with the belt he had worn with his pants that day. I vividly remember crying the entire night and every hit that came across my body. It felt like it wouldn't end, and his anger only grew when I made the grave mistake of accepting his accusations in the hopes that he would finally stop. Instead, I was dragged into the bathroom, waterboarded, and repeatedly assaulted that night. I think I tried
This
to
happened to
block
me
parts
2
of it
to
out of
3
my
years
mind
ago.
because I couldn't
I was
remember
around
the whole
23 at
thing.
the time.
Every attempt I had
I'm a
tried to
female
get away
and live in
only fueled
Romania.
him and his cold,
One
blank
night I was
stare
coming
at
home
me.
from
All
class.
I could think about
Master's
was if he
classes
was going to
started
kill
after
me
6
that
p.m.
night, as I
and
remembered
ended
that
at
he had
10.
grabbed something out of the
At
back
around
of my
11,
seat
I had to
before we
take the
left
subway
car.
for about
I
12
finally got the
stops.
answer to that
The
when I saw
destination
him
I had to
grab
get
what
off
looked
at
like
was
a
the end of the
wrench. He
line for
held
the
it up,
subway.
looking at me as if
At
warning
that
me not to
time, there
move
wouldn't
from the
be many
floor
people
where
on
I
the
had sat
subway.
down curled up
I'm
on
a
the
pretty
wall. I
lonely
endured
person.
the ordeal
All
till
I
the
need is
early
my
mornings
headset
and waited
and my
for him to
music,
fall asleep.
and I'm good
When
to
he
go. Said and done.
finally did,
I
around
plug in my
2
music.
a.m., I
I
grabbed
picked
my
the
phone
furthest
and
chair in the
t-shirt
subway
and
away from
managed
the
to
only 2
quietly leave the
people that were
room and
taking the
use the
subway
back
with me
exit
at
of the
that time.
Airbnb to leave. I
So
didn't
far,
care
so
that I
good.
wasn't fully clothed
Until
and
I
didn't have
see
any
with the
shoes.
corner of
I
my
ran out
eye
to the road in the
a
hopes of
silhouette
finding
approaching
anybody
me,
to
and
help
sitting
me,
right
or at
next
the
to me.
very least get a
It
ride
was a
out. As I
man,
was getting close
fairly
to the middle
built,
of the road,
dark
I
hair,
felt something
wearing
grab the back of my
glasses,
shirt, and
a
it was my
black shirt
boyfriend.
with a
He was
black
obviously
hoodie,
pissed
and a
off and
sickening
began dragging
smile.
me. I tried to
He
get
doesn't
away
engage in
despite
talking
feeling
with
my
me,
feet and legs
but would
being
just
dragged
stare at my
across the
phone as I would
concrete.
browse through
Luckily
my
enough,
music.
there was a Coast
I could
Guard
hear
who
him
spotted
breathe
us. We
heavily,
had stayed near
not
a
like
water
painfully,
area, and I made
but
it
still,
incredibly clear to the
like he was
Coast
feeling
Guard that I
something
wanted
very
to get away
strong.
from my boyfriend,
I
who
feel
tried to act
uneasy,
like
so
everything
I
was
decided to
okay.
change my
This
seat
good-hearted
and
soul
go even
alerted
further
the
behind,
police and kept
trying
my
to avoid him
boyfriend a
without
short
looking like a
distance from
freak
me
myself.
until they arrived. I saw
I'm
the
not sure by
expression on the
whom.
Coast Guard's
There was
face
another
turn from
person with us the
angry to
whole way.
horrified
I
as he
guess that
spoke to the
scared me even
police.
more.
Despite being
I
incredibly
pick a new chair,
embarrassed and knowing I
sit
would get
down,
an earful
plug
from
my
my
headset
parents,
again,
I
and
contacted
proceed with the
them, and they
remaining
picked me up
6
at
to
the
12
police
stops
station
on my way
horrified at
home.
my state. I
I see the
later learned that
silhouette
he was an
growing bigger
ex-convict
and
who had been
bigger,
released 2
and a
years
breeze running
ago
on my
and had
skin
been
as I
charged with
realized the
assault
guy
and
is again
battery
sitting
by
right
several
next to
women
me,
in his province
glancing in
before he moved
midair,
to the city.
dead
He went by a
eyes,
different
a
name and
big
chose an
smile,
online
staring
dating,
right
and
into
had
my
been
phone.
private messaging various
I
women
panic.
apart from me,
There are
and I
still
was the
4 stops to
unfortunate
go.
victim who
I
fell
have
for his
nowhere to hide.
charades. I couldn't
I
imagine
look
what else
after
would
the
have
other
happened to me
people
if
on
the
the
Coast
subway
Guard
trying to
hadn't
sit
spotted
next to
us
her,
and helped me.
thinking
To
that
this
strength
day, I
comes
still
in numbers.
vividly remember this
She is no
encounter
longer
and
there.
haven't completely
I start
recovered.
shaking a
I didn't
little
hear
bit,
from my
but
boyfriend
not
again,
allowing the
and I
creeper
cut
to
off
notice
ties
me
with him
being
that day.
vulnerable.
I can only hope he was
I
either
stand up to
arrested
go to
or
the
has not
door
found another victim.
and just decide.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.